a great question here from Kevin. I think actually it's not very often asked, but it's a really good question. How do you stop yourself overthinking the event and be able to get proper rest before the event actually happens?
Yeah, there are 2 good points in there. The proper rest, I think it's how well do you sleep is the first question. And being able to get some data on that is now possible with some of the watches. And so what you want is to be able to sleep for as well as possible. So first thing to do is what is good sleep for you, and get good sleep habits. And so, I mean, the good sleep habits are not rocket science. They are avoid caffeine, lots of caffeine late on, lots of sweet meals late on, get into a routine, turn the technology down. And so try to get into good sleep habits so that where they are challenged, i.e. nerves, it's going to be, you've got a routine, well practiced, knowing that works to use when you really want it. So the first is to get good at being restful, get good at relaxing, get good at sleeping. Relaxing you can do as a skill. You can do progressive muscular relaxation, of which is actually quite good to do at points. So can I relax myself? The good part about that is YouTube has got loads of people narrating it, so you can have it narrated by male, female, different style, different background music, progressive muscular relaxation for those who want to do it. And then the first part of that was, how do you stop yourself? Is it how do you stop sabotaging your race?
Let me just bring it up a second. It was, how do you stop yourself overthinking the event and be able to get proper rest before the event happens? So
The overthinking bit is kind of this over negative thinking is one is spend quite a lot of time on the logistics, right? Because one of those things that which our stressors are all the bits about getting to the start and everything else that comes with it. So over planning that is a good idea. So you're not over worrying it. But you've got a plan, which is you write down the plan so you can look to see that you've done everything. So have I done this? Have I booked the tickets? Yes. Have I done this? Yes. Yes. How far does it take? And so on and so on. Work out all the logistics so that your brain is not overloaded by a load of complicated decisions in what was likely to be an unknown territory beforehand. You don't know the area that well and so on. So you plan a lot around that. And then the overthinking part is to try and get all of those out really early on. So what's going to go wrong? What am I going to do? And overplan. So, and get those all of those, write them down and have a look at them. And then using your rational brain is to go, well, if that does happen, what am I going to do? What are the options? What if I get tired? What if I get tired? Has the world ended, or have I just gone out too quickly? Will I need to slow down for an hour, 2 hours? And is that the end of the world? And rationalise it to a point that then you go, well, a whole series of semi-disasters which can come out, which can be the cause of your overthinking, of which you then have plans for, and you are calm plans, or you rethink them through so that they are not over-exaggerated. Because the overthinking, and it's partly because partly will be because you want to do quite well, and partly because of uncertainty about what's going on. You're not going to have the certainty because the nature of these events is that they are often quite difficult. They go over long terrains. I do think the ultras, the fun ultras, like the Thunder Run, which I think a couple of the people on here have done, which is just up the road from me, where you do a 10K lap loads of times, either on your own or in teams, is that once you've done a couple of those laps, you basically can do it in your sleep. And that sort of thing does help. You can't do it in your sleep, but you know that you can get round again. You know the route quite well, and there's a real sense of we're back here again, even though you are doing loop after loop after loop. And for people doing ultras, I think those Thunder Run type ones or multi-laps are a really good way to start, because you do get confident that you can do another lap. There are always people on the course, so you don't get lost.
And one thing I'd add as well, Kevin, is that I think for me, and this is a personal thing for me, I think planning effectively, and you kind of alluded to that, I think, when talking about making a list of stuff that you need to do, planning for that event that you're doing. So, being very specific around that event. So like I said, if it's something like Thunder Run, the logistics, what it's going to be. If your race is in, say, a different country, and that can be quite it's difficult to travel these days, but it can often be in a different country. So you might consider things like, okay, I've got to also make sure that I've got some food that I know I can tolerate, for breakfast in the morning. So for me, what I would say to athletes I work with is plan during that week, have a whole plan of everything. And then also some reflection back on your training to give you that confidence, look back at your training, pick out some highlights from each week. And some of the weeks it's going to purely suck. If you're doing some ultra training, you might find, Jesus, I'm absolutely exhausted that week. But the highlight? Well, the highlight is that after 3 weeks of ever increasing distance, I managed to get a huge volume of training in over that block. So that's a highlight. Find highlights from each individual part of your training. Stick them. I said to people, stick them on your fridge or stick them in places that you can see them easily during the week to kind of reinforce that positive message back to you, so you get something back for that. But the key thing really is planning for the specific event. If you know it's going to be a trail event, make sure that you've factored that into your training as well. So then you're not going to overthink too much, because it's, like I said to me, I live in a very flat lands in rural York, or near the edge of York. I know if I'm going to go running a hilly race that I have to prepare for that. And I know that if I haven't prepared for that, I can guarantee that I'm going to be sat there the day before, the night before, probably struggling to sleep and panicking about what I've got coming up ahead of me. So it's that planning, I think, as well as a key thing. Anything more to add to that, really?
Planning is a really good way to reduce the stresses of competition. And
nice little tick boxes, I think. You can just tick them off. This.
Yeah, where someone else has done all the planning and it's really calm, those events are really enjoyable. And when you're doing it on your own, you just realise, well, all that planning is really sapping your energy.
True. A question here from Eric Fowler. Hi, Andy. Great to see and hear you again. He's obviously not seen enough of you. I've heard the term central controller, I'm guessing that like central governor, used to describe the negative thoughts urging one to slow down or stop. How can I distinguish between the real physiological signals of exhaustion and the physiological barriers? Psychological barriers.
I know Eric from many races together, and when I did sub 3, I saw him near Big Ben. The central governor, the idea that you won't run yourself to death. That's that, in essence, that theory, and that there's lots of arguments to say that is true, and the brain really does have lots of mechanisms in there to call you to slow down at the point where physiological feedback that's coming back saying, oh, we can't go much further. Much of your training is about managing that central governor, in that you'll have a goal which says, I want to run at this speed, and the central governor goes, that's a bit hard. And you go, yeah, so fine. You can tell me it's fine. And the ongoing narration in your head will be that your body, via physiological feedback, the message is saying you can't carry on. And you say, but I want to carry on. I can cope with that. And when it's voluntary, so it's a goal that you pick. There's always a choice that you go, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. The actual point where you could question whether the central governor is a theoretically sensible way to explain fatigue is where people are in really intense emotional situations where life and death is at stake, and they do manage to they exert themselves far beyond what they thought their physical capacity was, whether that's tests of strength, lifting cars off children, being able to run faster than they previously thought and for longer than what they previously thought, where the emotions kick in and where the goal is really important. humans find an enormous amount of resources. In some ways, being attuned to how really committed you want to be able to run yourself to collapse is you can do that in psychological skills training, and you can have a choice of what the limits you're going to push yourselves to. Well, and we see that the Brownleys, a very good example of the governor. Brownlee won, Governor nil, when one collapsed at the end of that race. And the motivation to keep going meant that the physiological symptoms were simply squashed and interpreted as this is key to the training, interpreted as normal signals for running this hard, for exercising this hard, and to be dealt with and to be managed. And you manage those by going, can I do 5 seconds more? Can I get to the next lamppost? Can I get to the next part? And you chip it away at small parts. Because if you said, if it's you're at a point where it's feeling right near the end, you almost naturally give up. In that you go, I've run out of energy. People get to the end of a race sprinting in and then collapse because the regulation of the brain to commit to the goal, once that switches off, the whole process the whole cascade is that we can switch everything off and everything gets switched off. In many of the physiological tests I've done in the lab where we've gone people to max, at the point where the treadmill gets a bit quicker or the hill gets a bit steeper as you go up on increments, and the person doesn't think they're going to get through, it is in essence their brain saying, I'm giving up, rather than their body. The absolute physiological max, I'm not certain we get there. I think people could push themselves to be further. It'd be completely unethical to do this. But in running treadmill tests, rarely, even with a harness, does somebody run until the harness takes them. They push themselves to the point of exhaustion. And so it's very difficult to override that. You need a goal which is really important, really committed to, and are really accustomed to saying, I can push for another bit longer, and keep going through that. Do you distinguish them between real ones and psychological ones? The psychological ones typically come alongside the physiological ones. The job of your psychological skills, if the goal is to go as quickly as possible and to calm these negative thoughts that come with intense physiology down, is to try and reappraise them and to try and push through them. The fake physiological ones can be being really nervous and feeling that you're more fatigued than what you are. And that's quite normal, and that people get that at the start, and that when they start too quickly, they then get a massive sense of negativity that they're not going to be able to keep this going. Of which there's an interplay between managing that so that you take care of the physiology, so that you avoid going too hard, so that you don't get the negative thoughts, or you put some block barriers in, so you put some strategies in so that you actively say, yes, it does feel very hard, but it won't do very long. This is normal part of the warm-up. I'll get my second wind, being kind of phrases that might be used. But the distinguishing between the two, I don't think we have. It would be nice to think that the psychology can always overcome the physiology, but you are actually reappraising to intense physiological symptoms, and that's normal. That's fine. That's fine. I quite like getting physiological data from training, such as a heart rate, so that you can see where the negative thoughts come. So if you haven't done the hard training where that they come along, they drift to a lower intensity. And we'll get this because you haven't done any races. And races are a great way to tune up that the buffers, because you kind of forget you're tired because you're trying to catch person X next to you, or somebody runs by you. Or the first marathon I did, I knew it was going bad when this old lady passed me and said, "Nearly there, young man." And you get emotions along with such episodes, and those emotions then suddenly give you a sense of adrenaline, and that adrenaline helps you kick through. We're missing all of that, and that once you've actually achieved something, you push yourself harder than what you would have done. You get confidence that when something like that, because when a similar situation comes up again, you said, "I could do it then, I can do it now," and so you learn to push yourself through.
And what I'd probably add to that a little bit, anyway, I think that's a great comprehensive answer there, but I think to add to that, to me, my own honest, and it's just purely my opinion, it's not the opinion of the governing body, and is that in most cases, I don't think we ever actually do get anywhere close to reaching our sort of full physiological limits. So in most cases, when you are getting that voice telling you to slow down, it probably is just your psychology saying to you, "I want to protect you a little bit. This is a tough day out. Let's just relax a little bit, slow down." And so I think for most people, they're very rarely going to get to a situation where actually they are at their complete 100% exhaustion. It is quite rare, I think, in sport generally. I've seen it only a few times.
Yeah. Rowers manage to do it quite often.
True.
On the 2K, they get this utterly drain themselves out. The classics, the Brownleys as being one. There's a few of them, but not many. In ultras, you've got the classics at the end of the Ironman where they can't run and they're walking, where the physiological everything is broken down, but what's keeping going is that button. Can I keep pushing harder? I always try to separate your physiological symptoms, such as physiological fatigue. So this is where my heart rate and all that's going from the psychological one that says, am I prepared to keep pushing? Am I prepared to keep pushing? Well, the button you're going to push on, because you get tired, mentally tired, and you go, actually, I'm not now. It's good to know when that occurs. I'll stop now. Why is that not? You are tired, you're physically tired, and you accept you're that tired. You have stopped because you've chosen to stop.